The Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy right now get you a deposit bonus of up to $250. Smash the like while you're here. FantasyNational.com/Mayo gives you access to all the tools that I'm using for the walkthrough today. They're going to see up on the screen, or if you're just listening to the audio version. But I want to talk about the Memorial, research, picks, and maybe an early guess the odds. Although, when it comes to these small field events, the odds are going to be a little bit different because Scotty's going to be like, well, plus 400, plus 350. Rory will be 7-1, and then everyone else. I guess Xander's probably moved himself up into that mix as well. He probably comes in at like 10-1 or something like that. But they're just going to squeeze us in terms of the odds in all of these signature events. But overall, this is the final signature event with a cut line, at least. There's 71 players in the field. I suppose more could be added based on the Aon Next 5, which you can take a look at it right now, actually. I was looking at it before I came in. I really can't make much sense of what's going on with this. But you can see, I'm obviously recording this the Sunday of the Canadian Open, so we don't know the final there, although Robert McIntyre has a 4-stroke lead, which would make him number 1 in the Aon Swing 5. Davis Riley would be number 2, but Davis Riley would have a win, and so would Robert McIntyre, which I think automatically puts you in to all of the signature events. So by this logic, that it's like the top 5 who are not previously in, I guess that would take McIntyre and Riley off of that list. It's like Bhatia is still on the next 10, but Bhatia has a win too, and so does Steven Yeager, and so does Mathieu Pavon, so does Ludwig Aubert. Like, all these guys have wins, and so does Taylor Pendrith. Did these guys qualify? I like the idea of having this point system where you can win yourself a place in. I'd love to see Davis Thompson or Mac Messenger end up in the Memorial because they played so well in the previous 3 tournaments. They get themselves in, but maybe making it a little bit easier to understand of how these standings are going to work and really lay it out for everyone, I think would give us a better sense of what we're actually trying to watch. Like I said, the Aon Next 5 makes a lot of logical sense. Something I could root for if I was watching the Canadian Open later today. Be like, oh, I'm really rooting for Pearson Cooney to make these 2 birdies so his dad doesn't have to buy him a spot into the Memorial. But I have no idea if 2 birdies will do anything for him. Because is he going to take Robert McIntyre's place in the Aon Next Swing if Robert McIntyre wins? Is Davis Riley? I mean, Goddard has a win on there too, for Christ's sake. Like, no idea what's going on. So it looks like those guys will be in the field. As of right now, with Snedeker, Kuchar, and Horschel getting sponsors exemptions, I believe Webb Simpson is out of his exemptions at this point. I think Adam Scott is too, because Adam Scott's been trying to play himself into the U.S. Open, where he has not missed a major championship since 2001. He's going to have to go qualify, it looks like, probably at the Canadian sectional qualifying after the Canadian Open, which I believe is on Monday or Tuesday. Whichever day is the longest day in golf where everyone tries to qualify for the U.S. Open. I believe that is this week, with the U.S. Open coming next week. Ton of content for the U.S. Open, by the way. I believe that's going to start with Friday, player by player, me and Vincenzi. Going to battle it back and forth to see who we like at Pinehurst. Keith Stewart's going to join me for the course breakdown. You know, Byron, Cam, Jeff, Cuss, Tambo, everyone is going to be in play this week for the U.S. Open. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But for this week, it looks like Adam Scott's not going to be in the Memorial Field. It's 71 players, top 50 in ties end up making the cut. But unless you really flame out, and you can at Memorial, as we'll see here in a second, that you can probably kind of identify and kind of peg who the guys who are going to miss the cut are going to be. But still, I do like the fact that 21 players will be eliminated after Friday. It gives some incentive to try somewhat hard and not just show up, hit a tee shot, collect a paycheck, move on your way. I just think it adds a little bit more incentive. And obviously for daily fantasy players, for bettors, head-to-head players, whatever it might be, having a cut does install something to root for on Friday. I don't see how the PGA Tour misses this every single time, but alas, they do. Let's get to the course. Muirfield Village is a Jack Nicklaus design course, par 72, 7,569 yards, bent grass green, 68 bunkers across the course, with the greenside bunkers being some of the most challenging that the players see every year on the PGA Tour. 13 holes with water in play and an average green size of 5,000 square feet. Funny to think about it because Muirfield Village, I believe, is the 6th longest course the players have competed on so far this season. Bent grass greens that are only 5,000 yards. That is very similar to what we saw at Valhalla 2 weeks ago. That one of the longest courses that the players, I believe that was the 3rd longest course, majors included, so far in 2024. Bent grass greens that were 5,000 square feet. And when you take a look at the very top of that leaderboard, you see Xander ends up with a win at the PGA Championship. In case you forgot, if you haven't been paying attention for 2 weeks or something like that, and his Memorial track record should be a lot better than you think it is. I mean, he's finished inside the top 24 of the past 5 years with no top 10s. Strangely enough. But the other 2 guys on that list, Victor Hovland, who was last year's champion at Muirfield Village, and Bryson DeChambeau, who was the 2018 champion at Muirfield Village, that maybe there is some sort of crossover to that list. Just in the recent past, that's what we've seen. Some of these guys end up winning. I forget how Patrick Cantlay did at the PGA Championship. Since it's Patrick Cantlay, I just assumed he missed the cut, but he's won here twice in the past 6 years. So he won in 2019. Obviously, he won again in 2021 at -13 in a playoff over Morikawa. And Morikawa is another one who's won at Muirfield Village, was at the very top of the leaderboard at Valhalla. He won during the work day during the COVID comeback year in 2020. Played much easier and much shorter than it did when John Rahm won a week later at -9, which is one of the most difficult tracks we've ever seen on the PGA Tour, with how burnt out and how hard Jack Nicklaus and the team made Muirfield Village in 2020. It just played so firm and so fast. Yeah, Patrick Cantlay did make the cut, but Morikawa lost to Cantlay in that playoff in 2021 when Rahm was forced to withdraw with COVID, when he was killing everyone after 3 rounds. And the little things that stick out in your mind. But either way, it's very clear. Billy Horschel, we won here 2 years ago. He finished inside the top 10 at Valhalla. I just saw a lot of similar names rear their ugly head up from Valhalla of what we saw at Muirfield Village over the years. So just a few other people, since we're sticking along here, more on the course here in a second, of who did well at the PGA Championship. In case you forgot, Dietrich, Lowry, and Lowry has a good connection because Firestone and Memorial used to have a lot of crossover elements. Obviously, the only win that Shane Lowry has as a singles competitor in America is actually at Firestone. Justin Rose, a former winner at Memorial and a former playoff loser to David Lingmerth in 2015, ended up coming in 6th. Billy Horschel's won at Muirfield Village. Justin Thomas has not, but he ended up coming in 8th. Bobby Mack, who's having a nice showing this week. Scheffler lost 8 strokes putting last year and still ended up coming in 3rd. Who else do you have? Theegala, Rory, Norin, Lee Hodges, Taylor Moore. Yeah, so these are the guys that I would be looking at this week, is all I'm saying, in terms of a bit of crossover courses. We haven't seen Firestone in so long that we're likely not going to see much of it anyway, in terms of everything translating through. Tiger was great at both of them. I mentioned Lowry won. Keegan Bradley has played well at both courses. Bubba has played well at both courses, but it's been so long he's not even on the PGA Tour anymore. Anyway, at the conclusion of the 2020 Memorial, that was after the second playing of the course in 2 weeks, the greens, the fairways, the tee boxes were all regrassed with around 100 extra yards added to the course, and the greens weren't just reconstructed with new bent grass, irrigation, and a precision air system, but they were also recontoured as well. And all the greenside bunkers were modified as well. Muirfield Village had already possessed, as mentioned, the most difficult greenside sand traps on tour, and the adjustments that we saw the next 2 years following that didn't really make them any easier. Still the most difficult on the PGA Tour. This year, there's a new tee box at number 16. It was moved 25 yards to the right, and the backside greenside bunker was removed. Last year, new tees were added to number 16. They've already changed that. That's the par 3 over the water, and number 17, which made it play 503 yards. So they've just been making it a little bit longer over the years, generating sand saves, as mentioned, from the 68 bunkers spread across the grounds is absolutely essential. The greenside bunkers at Muirfield Village have annually resulted in the longest proximity lengths of any course on the regular PGA Tour rotation. Couple that with tiny, lightning-fast greens, Memorial sits inside the top 5 courses with the lowest scrambling percentage, and despite the myriad changes over the years, the classical elements of Muirfield Village remain. High driving accuracy with the wide fairways, low greens in regulation with the smaller than average greens, and there's no real runoff areas except for some of the false fronts. Mainly around the greens, you're getting into the thick rough immediately, a little bit like Bay Hill, which is probably why Victor was able to get it up and down so well, because sometimes when you have those really tight lies, that can be less of an advantage. That's more of an advantage to the great around the green players. They're able to control the spin, pick it off that turf, no problem. Once you add the element of thick rough, where you really can't get much spin on the ball, it's kind of just like bump it out, hack it out, and be very good with your weight, you see some of the crappier guys from around the green end up doing a little bit better from that regard. Muirfield Village also had the longest proximity from inside 100 yards from the rough and the second lowest going for the green rate, with Colonial being the first on par 5s of any course in the regular rotation. And this can have a compounding effect. You lay up, but you miss the fairway, and you bring a much bigger number into play. This is why Muirfield has the second lowest birdie percentage from the rough of any course on tour. And despite the aforementioned tiny and lightning fast bent grass greens, putting really hasn't been that big of an issue for the field. It can get going bad for some of the bad putters sometimes. As I mentioned, Scotty Scheffler lost, I believe, 7.5 or 8.5 strokes a year ago. But they run so pure that, generally speaking, terrible putters have done pretty well. We've seen Morikawa win here, although he is putting a little bit better now. Ben An has lost in a playoff here in the past, who is putting a little bit better at the moment. When they hit those strides and ended up winning or losing in a playoff, they were not the best putters on the PGA Tour. In fact, they were some of the worst. Muirfield Village ranks as the third lowest 3-putt rate of any regular PGA course that we see every single year, and inside the top 5 makes from 5 to 15 feet. In 2021, the field made 89% of putts inside 10 feet. That is insane to think about. When trying to look at the common links between the winner, it's always imperative to remove Tiger Woods from any situation. That he won at Memorial 5 times, so it was everywhere a crossover course. With where Tiger has done well, no, Tiger kind of did well everywhere except for Riviera. But the approach widely outweighs driving at Muirfield Village. You don't even need to be that long at Muirfield Village. We've seen some short hitters win over the years. Jason Duffner has won here. Kyle Stanley ended up in that playoff with Ben An and Bryson. And that was before big beefy Bryson, when he wasn't leading the field in driving distance. And he was just good off the tee, hitting a ton of fairways at the time. So hitting the fairway widely outweighs driving. 14 of the past 16 winners have ranked inside the top 10 of strokes gained approach for the week. 2 years ago, 5 of the top 6 finishers on the leaderboard finished inside the top 10 in strokes gained approach. This isn't breaking news. If you're watching the show, listening to the show, you probably already know this stuff. But in case there's a first-time viewer out there, I gotta make mention of a lot of this stuff. Despite being a longer par 72, the shorter hitters, who again gain strokes off the tee and do very well with long irons, can very much compete. Any place that I mentioned, that Lingmerth, Stricker, Jason Duffner, Matt Kuchar are all past champions, can do this. And being in Ohio, the Firestone crossover is pretty real. Firestone was replaced on the schedule more than a few years ago now, probably I think 6 or 7 years ago. But different guys that had had success there: Leishman, Lingmerth, Bradley, Cantlay, Bubba, as mentioned, Bryson, Justin Rose, Jim Furyk, Jason Duffner. So a lot of different names up there, and a lot of those same names have navigated TBC Sawgrass really well in their careers. I'm not really sure how that correlates, despite being, you have to hit a ton of fairways at that course, I suppose, and they're not the widest. They are pretty wide fairways, but they're not the largest greens, or around the same size greens. Maybe that has something to do with it, or it's just random chance. Who knows? The key this week to tread water on the long par 3s and just don't waste the opportunities on the par 5. We see a few of these courses pop up. I don't expect it to be as difficult as it was a year ago we can jump over to fantasynational.com right now and take a look at that. But as you can see up here near the top, you can see all the tools, and we go to tournament history for Memorial and look through it. Victor Hovland was the winner a year ago. He won at -7 in a playoff over Denny McCarthy. The year before that, Billy Horschel kind of ran away with it at -13 over Cantlay. Denny was inside the top 5. Theegala was inside the top 5. So were Homa and Will Zalatoris. 2021 was the Cantlay over Morikawa year with Scheffler in third. Scheffler has come in third place in both of his last 2 appearances. We'll take a look at the strokes gain breakdown in a moment. That was a playoff. That was also the year that Rahm absolutely went nuclear and then had to leave because he tested positive for COVID. The year before that, Rahm won, and who the hell was in second place? I think it was Ryan. Yeah, Ryan Palmer ended up coming in second place that year. Fitz, Jason Day, Mac Hughes. This was such a weird outlier year. Even we take a look at the strokes gain for 2020, and you can just see like the winning score was -9, but the -9 was, let's see, -9, -6, 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, 1. There were 9 guys, including Kevin Na, Luke List at even par. And I forgot that my main man, the Chinese bad boy of golf, Xingzhu Zhang, ended up coming T10 that week. Harris English and Patrick Reed. All these guys were like even par. 9 guys finished below par, and it played so firm. It played so fast. It was actually incredible to watch. That's also the year when Rahm chipped in on 16. It's like, did his ball move when he grounded his club in the rough or wherever the hell it was? Just the tee to green game was absolutely electric. But you can see the guys that finished well, except for Xander, who lost 5 strokes putting, just all gained it on the green. Xander was the only player inside, the top 22 who lost strokes on the green. I really like Siwoo Kim this week. I was off him at the PGA Championship, so maybe I probably should be again, but it's not like, he just continues to bleed strokes on the green. I don't really know what's going on with that, but he's done very well at Memorial over the course of his career in terms of gaining strokes on the green. And very good from around these greens as well, that if he can keep up his accuracy off the tee, the similar approach play, and just not lose 3.5, 4, 5 strokes on the greens, I think he could very much compete this week. And I think that people will be off of him because of the last 2 times that we have seen him. So I wouldn't really correlate 2020. That really seemed like a really bizarre year, and they wanted to make it a little bit more difficult after the course hosting the workday the week before, where Morikawa beat Justin Thomas in the playoff and Vic missed it by a stroke as well. Those were the top 3. It just played a lot easier. Although I think it's number 14 they made into a drivable par 4 for the workday, which they really don't do at the Memorial. And I actually really liked it, just because I thought it was fun to see the guys, Morikawa especially, because I had bet on Morikawa that week, just try to take dead aim at these par 4s and really try to jump up on the field. The problem was that if you hit it into the water on the right-hand side, it wasn't that difficult of an up and down, so there really was no penalty for going for it. You'd probably make par, bogey at worst. There was no big numbers that came into play, and even making eagle on it when the pin was at the back was still pretty difficult. You just gave yourself a nice 2-putt easy birdie, but I remember Justin Thomas laying up on it every single time and still hitting it to 5 feet with his wedge. So maybe it was better off as a longer par 4 and not a drivable one. But I would like to see maybe if they could institute some sort of rule that if you hit it into the water there's like a designated drop zone that's not right next to the green. You have to go 100 yards back, so you bring the water back into play on a hole like that. I would like to see that, because I just think drivable par 4s that actually do present legitimate risk reward is what we want to see. So when you see these players in the 2020 leaderboard, that's kind of an outlier from what we normally see. You can see, Fitz has 2 top 10s. He's been cut twice. Don't expect very many players to be cut twice at a 50-man, in a 71-person field with a 50-man cut. Day has been okay. This is his home course because he lives in Ohio now, but T4 is the best he's done in his past 5 goes. Horschel has the win and a top 10. You can eject here so quickly. Spieth actually has a really good track record here. I'd actually like to see Spieth do something and get himself back into the mix. 2019 Cantlay won. Hideki has a win at this course. He was 6th that year. He was DQ'd. The 2022, he got DQ'd because of the weird, what the hell do you call it? Why is it liquid paper? It looked like it was on his 3-wood. I don't know why. I just remember this being a thing at the time, and he ended up getting DQ'd because of it. When we just take a look at the past 5 years, are there any random jabronis who pop up? Denny plays this well. Lowry plays this well, though Lowry probably loses like 8 million strokes putting every single time. But then he'll have the one round where he was okay and the ball striking was really good. But his accuracy really does come into play here. Fowler has Fowler won here? No, Fowler gagged it away to Jason Duffner in 2017. That I remember very vividly. So does Jeff, because Jeff bet on him. Horschel, Morikawa, Bezadenhout has been pretty good in 3 starts, although nothing better than T22. Shank was top 10 last year, top 30 the year before that. Okay, Lee Hodges was T12 last year. I'll take a look at Lee Hodges. I think he was one of the names that popped up for the PGA Championship as well. Davis Riley, coming off his win, obviously withdrew this week from the RBC Canadian Open, was T13 in 2022. Anyone else? Eric Cole. Eric Cole's got it going bad right now. Although he was T24 last year, had been playing a lot better last year. So here's something interesting. I like Austin Eckroat this week. He's another player who just hits a ton of fairways, very accurate off the tee. You can see he's not playing the best golf coming in, although he did play pretty well, mainly due to putting at the PGA Championship. Not great around the greens. But the interesting thing was, when I went back and watched last year's, 2002 Memorial Health on the Corn Ferry Tour, second place. So great Memorial history, not so much at the Memorial Tournament, but if we search Eckroat, he was kind of up there in this tournament. He shot a 77 in the final round to really take himself out of it. The other one who did that was Lipsky. Lipsky also fired a 77. He ended up coming in 12th, but you can just see that Eckroat was very much in the mix and just completely imploded coming down the stretch. And we saw that with a few people, like, Hovland shot 2 under par. So did Denny. Scheffler had an amazing weekend. And Hideki, what the hell happened to Hideki? He shot a 65 in round 2. That I remember. Yeah, there's Hideki, 72, 65, 75, 76. Like, it played very difficult a year ago, which I very much appreciate. I like it when these courses play pretty hard. Everything that everyone wanted from the PGA Championship a year ago, we kind of got it this tournament. So maybe we'll get that again. Putnam, don't remember how he did. Lee Hodges, I just brought up, actually played well at the PGA Championship. He was 12th. He's been 12th each of the past 2 weeks, gaining a ton on approach, gaining a ton on the greens right now. And if I had to guess, he probably hits the ball pretty accurately off the tee. Let's take a look at his driving numbers. You can always do that on Fantasy National with driving and distance and accuracy. You can get the club head speeds. Overall driving accuracy is only 57%, sorry. But that's not really what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about how he hits fairways versus the field. Driving distance gained, very low. Loses distance to the field more often than not, despite the fact that, what is his average driving distance here? Doesn't say. Don't have that one. But we have the driving distance gained, and there it is. But the fairways gained, he has gained on the field, on fairways, basically every tournament, except for the RBC Heritage, which was a shorter course, strangely enough. So this actually sets up really well for Lee Hodges. So I like that a lot. So Lee Hodges. Let's add Hodges to the list. Who do we have so far? Hodges, Ben An, and all these guys will depend on odds. Like, I like Ben An a lot. If he comes in at 30-1, I don't know how much I like Ben An anymore in an elevated event. But I do think where Scotty, Rory, and Xander are going to soak up so much of the odds at the top. And you'll probably get Morikawa and Cantlay as well coming in. I don't want to say overpriced, but because they've had success and Morikawa is playing really well right now, that they might get overvalued in this market a little bit. Spieth will most likely be overvalued. So if those guys are at 18 to 22, those 3 guys, along with Ludwig, because that's just where Ludwig is every single week, I'm sure there's someone I'm forgetting in this mix as well. It doesn't matter. If you go Rory, Xander, Scheffler, and then Morikawa, Ludwig, Spieth, and like others of that vein, there's only so many guys that can be sub 30-1, even in a signature event field, that you might start getting a little bit of a better number. McClure Messenger. Taylor Moore. Should I bet on Taylor Moore? Guy can't hit an iron, and I did say that irons are like the most important thing here. Dude really can't hit irons, but he keeps having great finishes. He can putt really well. He drives it really well. He's great around the greens. The finishes don't really weirdly correlate to guys who have success on the PGA Tour. And it's funny because the one week I did bet him at Valspar when he was trying to get his repeat performance. I bet him the next week in Houston as well, although he came second, he didn't have a chance to win because he blew it on the par 5 coming down the stretch. And then once he didn't make birdie there and put it in the water, that was the end of him. You knew that he couldn't win. But the few weeks that he's actually hit his irons well, the driving has been really bad, which is normally the thing that he does well, which is kind of funny to think about. And he just couldn't roll putts any of those weeks when he was hitting his irons pretty well. But to go back to the course itself and to take a look at, you can use this tab, course breakdown. At the top, we can see, I mean, just going through everything, there's no DraftKings streak to speak of, as number 10, the third most difficult hole, so you're not really getting anything on the wraparound there. Number 18, the most difficult hole on the golf course. I guess because 16, 17, and 18 are 3 of the 4 most difficult holes on the course, that inevitably just starting on one might make things easier if you're one of the lucky 10% of people that can scrounge out a birdie on number 10, but there's no discernible difference here. So you can see, approach over a stroke around for the top 10. The higher we get up the leaderboard, the more that's going to change. Like, look how more pronounced that becomes almost immediately when you change it to top 5 finishers. Even putting doesn't even hold a candle to approach. So that's something to look at when we're thinking about it. Ball striking outweighs short game amongst the top 5 finishers as well. Generally, that flips a little bit because you always need to run such a hot putter in order to do anything. Not so much the case here. There are all the par 5s and number 14, which was the drivable one at the workday. So I was right. Number 14. Shout out Pat for knowing things, remembering things. Still carries a 23% birdie rate at the Memorial when it is not a drivable par 4. You see a 2% eagle rate, 1.4, 1.2, and 2.9% across the 4 par 5s. Like, if you are not making your hay on the par 5s, you're absolutely screwed this week. You can kind of see it. You have to gain there. You can't lose a ton on the par 3s. You need to gain just a little bit, and don't give it all away. Phil laid up on number 16 one year. That was the John Rahm year. That's why he played so stupidly difficult. It says it's 220 yards. I don't know what the hell it was playing that day, but it was into the wind, and the pin was tucked in the back left, where you had to carry like the meat of the water in order to stick it close. Rahm ended up putting it over the pin and then chipping it in on the way back. Phil laid up to the fairway, and it was fucking amazing. He was so disgusted by how it was set up. That's one thing I will always give Phil credit for. He did it at Shinnecock Hills. He did it here. When the course is playing legitimately unfair, Phil is not afraid to be petulant on the course, which I just very much enjoy. I mentioned before the driving accuracy, very high here because of the wide fairways, 68%. Greens and regulation, still very low. Even playing from the fairway, you start playing from the rough, no good. Not going to happen. Scrambling very low here. 50% scrambling rates. When we get on to Underdog Fantasy this week, by the way, if you didn't notice at the top, we have so many tools up here, and the leaderboard app. If you're a member at Fantasy National, you can get in on the leaderboard app, but we have the over-under tab at Fantasy National as well. We can just choose a player here just to see Scotty Scheffler at Memorial. Let's see what we got going on here. Obviously the underdog numbers aren't out yet, but he would go over 68.5, 82% of the time, even for Scotty Scheffler. And you can see his historic data at the course, his player course history. This is courses in general. This is everyone at the course. This is him at that course at Muirfield Village, and just the player overall, how he normally does versus that number. And like you said, like I just showed you, it takes like less than 2 seconds in order to generate all of this stuff. So you can manually put in what the lines are going to be on Underdog or any of the fantasy prop pick'em sites. It's just one of the tools at the top, and I just feel like people don't even realize it's up there. It was added like a month ago, so Moose was just on top of it, ended up doing that, but that's what we were looking at for what's going on. There's the live beta for, you can do Apple, Android. It's the only app that I use so far. I got in on a Vic Perez top 10 very early on Saturday morning, so hopefully that can end up coming to fruition. He can maintain his position inside the top 10. Maybe he can even play his way into this field this time around. Let's build out a quick model for Memorial and see what is happening for us. I haven't looked at this one in a while, but I do just from what I've been talking through so far, approach, fairways, long irons, sand saves, and long par 4s is what I assume that my model has looked like from the past, because those are the things that are most important to me this week. Memorial, new for 2023. Well, I built it last year. Let's see how it did. Turn off Valhalla. You know what? I'll leave the Valhalla one around just to see. As I mentioned, those courses seemingly had a lot of crossover potential between them. Again, very similar elements, very similar length. Valhalla, a little bit easier than Muirfield Village, but maybe we can find a few more names. So the strokes gain model overall, as you can see, this is what I have for my weights. I kind of run this one every week, just very short-term, past 24 rounds. Scheffler, Xander, Rory, Hideki, Ludwig, Henley, Akshay, Morikawa, Theegala, Connors. Those are your best 10. Then you got Glover. I actually like Glover this week as well. Maybe he can gain a little bit on the greens and not lose them all like he did at Colonial. But Glover, Hoagie, Clark, Siwoo, McCarthy, Dietrich, Bezadenhout, Mac Hughes, and Billy Horschel. For a lot of the past, I want to say few years, but this used to be a spot for players' breakthrough performances. We saw that a lot like Quail Hollow was at the same time. Like this was the site of Kuchar's big, I can't remember if he won this or the Players first. I think this was after. This was Hideki's breakout win in 2014. Obviously, this is by far the biggest win of David Lingmerth's career. Ditto with William McGirt. Duffner had the PGA Championship. That was sort of his big win. It was his first win, I think, in 6 years or something like that. Bryson's breakthrough win. Cantley's breakthrough win. This is a big win for Jon Rahm. He had done it at Torrey Pines as well, but Rahm was 20-1 that year. He had fallen down the board. The way that people talked about Jon Rahm, he had not won a major to that point. He was kind of getting the Xander treatment a little bit. Like, can this guy actually just win big events? Like, he fluked out and won at Torrey Pines. He can only win in California. And then all of a sudden the floodgates broke open. And then there was a discussion. Could anyone even ever be better than Jon Rahm has been? Funny how that narrative shifts pretty quickly on players. Let's go to Memorial. See how we did. New for 2023. And again, if you always want to check in on the live course stats, you can do that. You just have to click on the field that you're looking at. So if you want to go check out the Canadian Open live stats in real time, you can do that under the live stats feed, but you need to be on the Canadian Open. And if you come back during the Memorial, you need to be on Memorial. So past 24 rounds, how does this look? Scheffler, big shocker on that one. What do we have weighted in here anyway? Should probably take a look at that. Off the tee, 8, approach 25, 10% for those long par 4s. Sand saves 10 around the green, 10 par 5s, 5%. Proximity 200, proximity 175 to 200, 5 and 7. Greens and regulation gain, then putting 5 to 10, 10 to 15 feet, 5. So a lot of approach stats on here. I do want to throw driving accuracy into this mix, just to see what's going on. And the one good thing I like about the sliders as opposed to the old, you have to punch in all your numbers. I just want to see where I want to weight this. I want to weight approach more. I'm going to bring it down a little bit to be more than fairways gained. I'm going to make fairways gained about second on that list. Yeah, I'll make that 13, make approach 19. We had a lot of approach numbers. I'm going to erase off the tee and re-add it here at the bottom just so I can see off the tee and fairways gained next to each other, because those two things go hand in hand as one bleeds into the other, so we can see what it is. So past 24 rounds, Scotty Scheffler ranks number 1. Xander, Hideki, Ludwig, Henley. Okay, how has Henley played here historically? We can take a look at that. I was going to close out some tabs here at the top so the entire thing doesn't freeze on me. Russell Henley at the Memorial. Putts better on Bermuda, this we know. 16th a year ago, 29th, 33rd, and 6th. Every second year tends to gain strokes versus loses strokes on approach. You think he'd be better driving the ball because he's been a little bit better this year. Had some pretty good performances recently. Not that you'd ever notice, but the approach has been excellent. The putting has been kind of mediocre, to tell you the truth, but we know he has those spike putting rounds in him and has weirdly played some of the longer courses better this year. You would think of him as, I always call it the Russell Henley swing, Honda, Sony, Colonial, like those type of places, Wyndham, but he's played well at Quail Hollow, long course, Valhalla, long course, Bay Hill, long course, pretty well at Genesis, long course, so not the craziest thing. Start thinking about Russell Henley here. This week we'll see how he's done, distance and accuracy, versus the field. Dude hits fairways all the time. Riv is the only spot where he's lost on fairways in like the past 3 years, it looks like. So he's going to be playing from the spot where you want to be playing from, in the middle of the fairway. Let's put the nice star next to Henley's name. I didn't expect to see him up there so highly. The glove, I had made mention of the glove earlier. He is up there in the overall rankings for this course. Number 7, Rory, Akshay, Siwoo. There's Siwoo. Bez, Lowry, and Hodges. Hodges number 13. Like, that's ahead of Hoagie and Finau and Sungjae. I did mention that bad putters can have a lot of success here. Maybe that's something that can go hand in hand. Morikawa ranks number 6 because he is number 1 in fairways gained, number 6 off the tee. Terrible out of the sand, terrible with the short putts, but everything else is starting to look like Morikawa over the past 24 rounds rates 49th in strokes gained approach. However, if we take a look at Colin Morikawa, Charles Schwab PGA Championship, back-to-back T4s gaining on approach. And that was after being bad, objectively bad on approach from one of the best iron players on the planet. Maybe he has figured out what his flaws were coming in. Like, he sets up great for Pinehurst. He sets up great for this course. You can play the double. You can play the U.S. Open Memorial Double this week, next week for Colin Morikawa. As long as this keeps up, this around the green and putting. I mean, listen, he's not going to gain 3.5 strokes every tournament, but he's putting well right now. The around the green, I don't know what's happened to him, but he's figured that part out. He's one of a few players who has top 10s at both major championships so far this season, and he's gaining so much off the tee. He's added distance, and he's still the most accurate player in the field. And then all of a sudden, these irons have come out of nowhere. So let's shrink down the size. Past 12, I bet you Morikawa moves up. He might be number 2 or number 1. He's number 5. He moves up 1 spot. That was it, because the sand saves are still bad. The putting from 5 to 10 feet remains unchanged, but he jumps from 49th to 21st in strokes gained approach. And if we shrink it to 8 rounds, I bet you it looks even better for Morikawa. So the closer we get to now, the better it is for Morikawa. You always wonder, he goes from 6 to 3. So past 8 rounds overall, Xander, Rory, Colin, Scheffler, Rose, former winner, Keegan is up there as well. I mean, Keegan's had 2 pretty nice runs. I bet on him the past 2 times that he's played. Listen, he came second at Colonial. He had no chance to win at Colonial. PGA Championship, if he had just putted better the first few rounds, I think he let everyone off the tee. His off-the-tee game has been sparkling each of the past 2 events, averaging over 6 strokes per event in the past 2. The irons just never showed up at Colonial, but although he did putt and chip pretty well, how has he done on these greens over the years? Actually fairly decent. Can't hit his irons here. Really cannot chip at this course. Although we've seen him, again, at Firestone is one where he's played pretty well. Let's take a look at his driving and accuracy. I assume with the way that he's gaining right now that he's doing it pretty well. Yeah. He's hitting after a lapse in the middle of the season where he lost his accuracy. He has gotten it back, and the results have followed. So depending on where these guys sit on the board, are we going to get Henley at 40-1? Maybe, because he has been pretty valued. He's been valued in that range at signature events so far this season, although Keegan's been way back. Keegan's been, 80-1, 90-1 in a lot of these bigger end tournaments. Hell, he was 275 at the PGA Championship. Wouldn't expect to see that this week, but this is a type of tournament where he can be relatively competitive. I would say Seb Straka as well. You see Seb Straka ranks 11th in this category. We can take a look at Seb. He was bad at the PGA Championship, but has 3 top 10 finishes at 3 other events sandwiched around it. He was another one who played pretty well, I think, until Sunday at Memorial. He came 16th. He gained 7 strokes on approach last year. He gained 1.5 on the greens. Has gained on the greens at Memorial in 3 of the past 4 years. Cannot chip at this course to save his life. Whatever. But we take a look at Straka. Yeah, he was a 73-75. Because I saw his name near the top of the leaderboard through 3 rounds. Then he just kind of went away and fell down to 16th. So he's another one. As long as they can battle these guys at the very top of the board, I could see it happening. But as you can kind of hear, I have a little bit of a cold. You can hear that in my voice. But Straka, Hodges. Straka and Hodges from the bottom with Glover, and Siwoo and Henley, Keegan from the middle, Morikawa at the top is kind of where my preference lies so far this week. You have to kind of fade Scheffler actually making a putt or two, because you should probably take a look into what we saw from strokes gained a year ago. Just so you can see it visualized in front of you. It's just so funny to see. This is in the midst of the Skyder. 8.5 strokes putting is what he lost, and he missed the playoff by a stroke last year. Everyone else gaining a ton of strokes everywhere. Siwoo lost on the greens, but Siwoo's tee to green. 20.8 strokes gained tee to green for Scottie Scheffler, minus 8.5. The gap between Scottie and Siwoo, the 3rd and 4th place finishers, and Rahm was also incredibly bad on the greens last year. He was 3rd, gained 11.5 strokes tee to green, lost 5.2 on the greens. Spieth and Luke List were 4 and 5 in terms of strokes gained tee to green. And Rahm was like neutral around the greens. But this was the ultimate Scotty Rahm week where both of them just couldn't putt. We could have had an amazing clash of the two best players in the world at the time going at it. Many would say probably still the two best players in the world right now. Hey, Russell Henley and Seb Straka. 7, 6.4. There's Shank and Shane Lowry and Thomas Dietrich. So Dietrich couldn't putt last year, but I've mentioned his name 2 or 3 times already. And you can see 4th place at the PGA Championship and actually gained inside the top 10 on approach in his debut at this course. I don't know if his debut at his course was it the debut? Yeah, in his debut. He came 48th. Like, that's not good, but 4.2 strokes on approach is pretty good in a year where that played a little bit probably more difficult than we're going to see, only because when you compare it to the other scores that we've seen over the years, that, -7 is the highest score that we've seen since 2013, at least from what I'm looking at. You had -13, -13, -9, -19, -15. You can go low on these scores with the proper conditions if it doesn't get completely burnt out like it was last year. There's been more rain in Ohio in May than the average per year, so maybe it plays a little bit softer, and you don't get as much firm and fast, and you do see something more like Valhalla, where you end up with a -15 to -18 type winner. I don't know how much that skews how you want to look at things. I just thought that was an interesting note when I was looking at the weather and what the weather has been like coming up to this year's Memorial Tournament. Last thing to look at before we get you out of here is going to be the Jack Nicklaus courses. We'll look past, 12 rounds, and we'll look per round at Nicklaus courses, just to see if there's anyone randomly who pops up. Nicklaus Design Architect down here on the bottom left. And let's take a look. Per round scoring, we'll go to average, past 12, best player, Morikawa, Scheffler, Hovland, Xander, Eric Cole. Obviously, the other connection between Valhalla and Memorial, both Jack Nicklaus designs. So what courses are we looking at here? Glen Abbey, Muirfield Village for Workday, and this one, Nicklaus Tournament course at PGA West, PGA National, PGA West Nicklaus, the Concession Golf Club where Morikawa won, and Valhalla GC, obviously where Xander Schauffele has won. Eric Cole, pretty good on those courses over his past 12 rounds. You see Lee Hodges, also very good. Let's see what other courses those are. PGA Championship, Amex, Memorial, and Honda constitute his 12 rounds at this tournament. After that, so Hodges and Siwoo from the bottom end, along with Eric Cole, although Eric Cole seems like he's a different player at this point from maybe when he played more of those courses. It's been a bad go. He missed the cut again this week in Hamilton. He hasn't finished better than T21 since Bay Hill with a ton of miscuts in that mix. Maybe he can putt his way into it. Who knows? It's just not looking that way. Henley, Dietrich, Keegan, Ben Ann. Boom. There's the pocket of players that I like. And they all play pretty well. You can see on a strokes gained total basis on Jack Nicklaus courses. And that even includes Thomas Dietrich's like 10 putt on whatever that hole was at the Honda earlier this year. Putnam had a top 10 at this course last year. You can see he plays them pretty well. Denny, lost in a playoff, has a top 5. This has been a course where he's putt very, very well throughout the course of his career. Burns, Bez, they're all kind of up there. I just thought that was interesting that a lot of the guys that I've been circling around already ended up inside the top 20 when we just look at Jack courses overall. But that will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. No need, again, to guess the odds this week. I can try to do that very quickly for you if you like. Scotty, 3.5 to 1. Rory, if Rory ends up winning in Canada somehow, he's going to end up like 6 to 1. We'll say 7 to 1 for Rory. Xander, 10 to 1. Cantlay, Morikawa, Spieth, maybe Ludwig, right around 18 to 22 to 1. And then you're going to have your Max Homas, should be Wyndham Clark, Patrick Cantlay. All those guys will be kind of in your 25 to 35 range. But then you'll also get Ben Ann and Henley and random other dudes that pop up in there as well. Hovland will probably be 20 to 1. So if you want to look down the board a little bit and try to catch an opener, I would be looking for, again, at the top end, if you can get a number bigger than 20 on Morikawa, I would say bet it. Then you have Lee Hodges at the very bottom, along with, I really wish I had made better. A good thing I've made some of these notes next to the players' names. Dietrich, Lee Hodges as kind of like your bums down at the bottom, along with Keegan, Henley, Siwoo, Ben Ann, Keegan Bradley, Lucas Glover was another one to potentially be taking a look at here. I just like how their games fit this course. They come in at larger numbers. I would expect some of those guys to get bet down very quickly from when you see the opening numbers. All right? Smash a like while you're here. FantasyNational.com/Mayo. Hopefully it's Aaron Rai can make a huge comeback Sunday at the Canadian Open. Wouldn't that be nice for a big payday? But for anyone who has Bobby Mack, I'm not going to cheer against you unless Aaron Rai gets himself into the mix. So good luck with everything. Smash a like, FantasyNational.com/Mayo, and code Mayo and Underdog Fantasy right now to get yourself a deposit bonus of up to $250. If you sub to the free newsletter and you got the Tuesday edition, you get yourself a 6-1 winner on Underdog. That was in there. My first instincts of the week were right. I deviated from that and lost my next two. So that was no fun. The first one that we had, the free one in the newsletter, big winner this week. The code Mayo, Underdog Fantasy. All right? I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!